I love a sunburned country, a land of sweeping plains, of rugged mountain ranges, of droughts and flooding rains. Good morning and welcome to the 2019 Nuffield Conference, where we're gathered today to witness the presentations of the 2018 scholars and what I think is only fair to say, the best state in Australia, Queensland. Beautiful one day, perfect the next. Don't let the words of a savvy tourism marketing campaign gull you into the belief that Queensland is the land of milk and honey. Today I'll be taking an opportunity to present to you my findings on intensive beef operations within a tropical environment. But firstly, most foremost, I'd like to thank the people behind the opportunity, Nuffield Australia, for delivering an international network that has opened doors to a generation of young people that I would not have thought possible. My sponsor, Meat Livestock Australia, for instilling faith in myself for what I can hope to repay to this great industry. To my family, for fulfilling the void, both in our businesses and personal lives, I've created in a pursuit of knowledge. Our family property, Marklands, is located 45 kilometres south of Mackay, adjoining the Queensland coast. Surrounded by cane fields, Marklands is rather a unique and iconic cattle property in the area. With a combination of fertile cropping land, improved pasture creek flats and out to open floodplains, Marklands has all the makings of a very high yielding, profitable system. We can be prone to annual flooding, but we can also have long extended dry periods, making consistent production difficult. From damaging cyclone events such as Cyclone Debbie back in 2017, which dropped a record 1,500 millimetres in a single day, to the following 10-month period of zero rain. The grass on the other side of the fence is not always greener. Quick and efficient grass fattening was one component we lacked within our supply system. We could carry plenty of cattle, but struggled to produce MSA grading bullocks. This was the driving factor behind us applying for our own feedlot, giving us the ability to finish our own cattle, stabilising cash flows, and giving us full control whilst transitioning out of the sugar industry. The process to build the first feedlot in tropical Queensland was far from simple and was not without multiple hurdles to overcome. Lack of understanding and fear of the unknown saw us the centre of many debates due to far too few facts and far too much emotion. This only inspired me further to prove the concept can not only work, but can be quite prosperous. It quickly became about more than just me, and I was actually defending the future development prospects in the north. When I embarked on the Nuffield journey close to 2 years ago, I was unsure where we stood in comparison to our competitors on the world stage. The Australian beef industry already is a world leader in red meat production, but in terms of volumes produced, we're actually 6 times smaller than the USA. Australia is an export nation, and with this in mind, it's very important not to lose sight of what our consumers' needs are. The Australian beef industry is part of a world commodity market. Being one of the world's leading exporters, we're very much at the mercy of these markets. Regardless of how much we define our products as being clean, sustainably produced and high quality, our competitors are nipping at our heels, offering to the same markets cheaper products. Just last week, China granted export licences to another 25 Brazilian meat processing plants. Remembering that in recent months, China's been decimated by the African swine flu, which has created a huge vacuum to the world protein markets, that in many cases, Australian beef is actually too expensive to fill. We have to remember that other beef exporting countries are not our only competitors, but we're in fact competing against cheaper protein sources such as chicken, pork and pulse grains, and in more recent times, synthetic, fake or pretend meats. The northern beef industry has endured some of the most rewarding but at times challenging conditions over the years. With decreasing terms of trade, it's more critical than ever for producers to be as efficient as possible. With a shifting trend for producers to value add and aim towards heavier markets, it is ever more critical for producers to capitalise on the full potential of their assets. No longer is it economical to continually to buy land in preference of developing the land already owned. With the consistent capital gains of land values, producers must invest in land development to capitalise on the full potential of their assets. The live export industry has been a saviour to the north in recent years, with 1 million plus feeder cattle exiting our shores with good returns back to producers. That is most years, of course, with the exception being 2011, with the live export closure, followed by years of droughts. This, in many parts, has the industry on its knees. I believe in time we will likely lose access to some of our traditional live export markets for reasons outside of Australia's control. The cultural aversion across the world will be at times too difficult for us to contain. The pressures of social licensing and welfare standards will see the collapse of some of our current markets in time. Not a matter of if, but when. We as an industry must prepare for the unavoidable to ensure that we're not overexposed to any one market or trade partner. So in the event of a market closure, it will have little effect on the industry as a whole. The live export industry will never fail entirely, but individual trade destinations will come and go. Closure of the live export industry will not solve animal welfare concerns, but will in fact have the opposite effect, as our trade partners will be forced to turn to other world suppliers that have little influence outside their own countries. 99.9% of cattle pass through the live export chain without incident. No different to the very isolated cases of animal abuse here in Australia. Likewise, we need to be patient and focus on offenders and not condemn those that are in the right. Meat Livestock Australia have done a stellar job across the developing countries to bring their slaughter practices up to a world standard. Unfortunately, it's the negative headlines that grasp the world's attention, regardless of how small a percentage it actually is in the scale of the whole industry. The northern beef industry is not currently equipped to handle another complete live export closure. With little ability to finish the number of cattle that would be affected, and distances too great for existing transport to be feasible. A closure will see many businesses ruined, as we saw in 2011. Sustainability and diversity are catchwords that get used more and more readily throughout global agriculture. While I was travelling the world with the sole intention of researching strategies to take the highly successful Australian feedlot industry further north into tropical regions, it was hard not to get distracted with what else is going on in the broader industry. Carbon footprints, regenerative ag, seem to be topics of conversation, probably more so than the quality of the products. It was becoming clear that our consumers are more concerned with the story behind the product than the products themselves. Social licence means we have to have an answer for every problem thrown at us. With this in mind, I decided I must spread my time equally between three main areas: environmental factors and strategies to overcome them, alternative feed sources, and thirdly, supporting industries, networks and infrastructure that is required for a northern feedlot industry to reach its potential. Mulatto grass is actually one of the good news stories yet to be released. Working with Heritage Seeds Australia, we've been able to secure seed stock and have since multiplied to commercial quantities. This hybrid brachiaria is set to change the way we farm in the tropics, yielding 27 tonnes of dry matter per hectare at 18% protein or better. It is far superior to any existing grass species. But the real benefit comes from the 1.5 metre root system, giving it greater potential to utilise nutrients and store carbon. Already in the first 18 months we've had it on farm, we have doubled soil carbon levels, with more gains to be made. Environmental factors to be considered are the combination of effects on cattle whilst on feed and also those effects onto the environment. I believe that annual total rainfalls in tropical regions is in fact a poor reflection of the tropics as a whole. Much of annual totals is wasted and effectively runs out to sea, with little to no retainments in place. We need to focus calculations on effective rainfall totals, meaning rainfall has a use or purpose. Many would believe that a 2 metre plus rainfall area would be a state of eternal green. This is far from the case. With a large reliance on either private or public irrigation systems, with construction of feedlots becomes responsibilities to manage effluent. This will be achieved by using a partial sheltered system, giving cattle the option to escape the elements under a shed, while also having the amount of runoff, by halving the amount of runoff needing to be contained. All manure and effluent will be utilised within the silage producing areas. Nothing is to be wasted. Using technologies I saw overseas and more recently onshore, we're able to satisfy all EPA requirements. What's more, we can also achieve animal welfare standards that exceed any other current system by offering roofed areas to provide shelter and protection from the elements, giving animals maximum comfort while achieving high production. Non-content animals are non-productive. Water security was a hot topic in every country I visited, with battle lines drawn in California between agricultural and conservation groups in regards to how much water can be withheld from Sierra snowmelts for irrigation, to the Texas Panhandle and fears on the longevity of artesian water supplies, an island with its 3-week droughts. To the opposite end of the scale, with Brazil the source of my envy, with huge irrigation schemes spread across the country. Brazil has in excess of 200 large-scale hydroelectric power suppliers, with 500 more for private use, giving us some of the cheapest power in the world and creating endless opportunity. While the drought rages back in Australia, small regional towns' water supplies are drying up. The lifeblood of rural Australia is slipping away. The time for feasibility studies is over. We need hands on shovels for agriculture and regional areas to survive. If agriculture falls, Australia will plummet into a trade deficit and our economy will soon follow. Agriculture is the backbone of our nation, and the 3-year government system is flawed, as dams and key infrastructure cannot be achieved within one term, resulting in countless feasibility studies without a single clod of soil ever being turned, and re-election being an actual goal, and not nation-building infrastructure we require. For the northern beef industry to flourish, it needs to expand in unison with other industries. Grains and cottons will also need to expand further than previously attempted. Trial projects have proven that it can be achieved. With further research and trials, I believe that these yields will only increase. While the Murray-Darling and South runs dry, and the rivers of North Australia drain out to sea unutilised, they are unutilised in fear of repeating the same mistakes of the Murray. But these mistakes were made as infrastructure did not stay ahead of demand, and the North is not the Murray. Had government not laid idle, we would not see the extent of the drought we now see today. This drought is a lack of foresight. This drought is a result of lack of foresight and action. Do not blame climate change, but our lack of ability to adapt to a changing climate. Governments continue to pour money into urbanisation, while regional communities struggle to maintain bare essentials. Just for a minute, think about what regional Australia would look like had the Bradfield scheme been built all them years ago. There's no reason why Australian interior cannot be just as productive as American Midwest. It just needs water, rail networks, storage facilities, schools for our kids. That's what it means to be nation-building leadership, not travelling to Switzerland in a bid to secure the 2032 Olympic Games. Developing the North needs to become a priority, but as it currently stands, progression in the North is up to either foreign or private investment of the brave few, prepared to step into the unknown. I think it will all happen in time. Agriculture is key to reversing damages of climate change. But if the world is going to make it agriculture's responsibility to reverse the damages of urbanisation and industrialisation, we need to be rewarded as such. It's hard to remain green while painted in red. It's impossible for me to relay all the information and knowledge I've acquired over the last 2 years within a given time slot, and I feel I've actually raised more questions than I've given answers. But we are entering into the most exciting times the world of agriculture has ever seen, with Northern Australia being the forefront of everybody's mind. Northern Australia is no longer the last frontier, and it's time to turn the North into the fabled food bowl. Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. Thank you.